Hello, I'm Kate Geary and I'm Head of Professional Development and Practice at the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists. I'm sorry that Jen and I can't be with you in person today. We were very much looking forward to finally getting out and about and seeing people in person. We are very pleased though to have the opportunity to talk about a piece of work that CIFA has been undertaking to restructure our standards and guidance in response to an increasingly international membership, and particularly about a project we're undertaking with funding from the Historic Environment Division in response to recommendations in Archaeology 2030, a strategic approach for Northern Ireland. But before I go on to talk about the project, I wanted to just start with a little bit of terminology. So for those of you who aren't familiar with CIFA standards and guidance, we have a suite of 13 standards which sit underneath our ethical code of conduct. The code defines the standards of ethical behaviour professional archaeologists need to maintain, and the standards expand on that for specific work products and areas of practice. So they cover technical work products like excavation, evaluation, watching briefs, etc. And they also cover areas of practice like the provision of archaeological advice by historic environment services or the procuring and commissioning of archaeological work. For each product or area of practice, the standard defines a required outcome, and the guidance advises on how that outcome may be reached. The standards are formulated by the sector. They aren't handed down from on high. They're based on a shared understanding of current good practice and are used to define a measurable quality standard when archaeological work is being designed or commissioned. Most work undertaken as part of the planning process in the UK, for example, will specify compliance with CIFA standards as part of the brief or project design, whether or not that work is actually carried out by CIFA members. All CIFA members are required to comply with the standard. The guidance varies in the strength of its direction, setting out what members should or might do, and is largely advisory, although there are clauses in there that strongly advise members that members should do something in a particular way. The guidance is advisory simply because it's impossible to provide guidance for every eventuality, and members are encouraged to use their professional judgment alongside the code when deciding on a course of action or how to approach a particular piece of work. Just to make sure that we're all completely on the same page with the terminology, we use the following definitions. So a standard is something you can measure against, and therefore the CIFA standard is a measurable outcome. Guidance is advice on how to do something. So the CIFA guidance is how you should or how you might achieve the outcome and avoid substandard work, which could lead to an allegation of professional misconduct. And quality in our sense is defined as fitness for purpose. One challenge we face at the moment is that our membership outside the UK is increasing, but our standards, and more particularly the guidance that supports them, are largely based on UK practice. And that reflects the fact that for many years our membership has been predominantly in the UK, and it still is. We have small numbers of members across a range of European countries and beyond. Even within the UK, though, devolved planning regimes have led to policy and practice divergence, meaning that one size no longer fits all. Ensuring that CIFA members are supported by relevant and appropriate professional standards wherever they work has required a rethink of the structure and of our approach. The new structure is based around the idea of global standards, which are relevant regardless of the country a CIFA member is working in. And these will be supported by more detailed guidance applicable to practice in that country, which may be produced by CIFA, or it may be produced by national third parties or sector specialists or expert bodies, and signposted from the guidance. As well as supporting an increasingly international membership, this also gives us an opportunity to work with national experts to strengthen CIFA standards and promote professional practice across the globe. So for each product or practice area, there will be a standard supported by high-level guidance, which will be applicable wherever CIFA members work. This will be supported by more detailed guidance relevant to a specific jurisdiction. Initially, we'll be working within the 4 UK nations and the 2 countries covered by existing member networks, which are Australia and Germany, but the model could be expanded to any country where there are CIFA members and where it's useful and appropriate to do so. The Archaeology 2030 strategy and funding from HED has given us the opportunity to start this process in Northern Ireland, and we're working closely with IAI on this. The aim is to review CIFA standards and guidance and provide specific advice and interpretation as to their application in Northern Ireland in order to develop a suite of aligned documents which enable the profession to deliver to consistent professional standards. The first phase of the work, which was undertaken in-house by CIFA, involved mapping and cross-referencing CIFA standards and guidance with the IAI codes of conduct and existing HED documentation. The current phase of the project is being carried out by IAC Limited as our consultants with expertise in Northern Irish archaeology, and the focus is on reviewing the HED documentation against CIFA standards and guidance, agreeing the best format for the future suite of documents. The options are either to revise the HED documents to ensure they're consistent with CIFA standards and guidance and can be endorsed and signposted by CIFA as jurisdiction-specific guidance, or to incorporate the existing HED documents within an expanded CIFA standard. At this stage, we're focusing on the former, and the project will advise on, and where appropriate, undertake the revisions necessary for this to happen. We're starting with 4 fieldwork standards and guidance which have close equivalents in the IAI codes of conduct and which have been mapped to the HED excavation standards. So those are the excavation standard and guidance, the standard and guidance for watching briefs, for field evaluation, and the closely associated standard and guidance for finds work. CIFA had previously identified 3 of its standards and guidance as being in need of substantial revision, which will be taken forward over the next 12 months. There's a lot of work currently being undertaken around guidance and further support for archiving, particularly around selection strategies and digital archives. And we work closely with our own archives special interest group and with the Archaeological Archives Forum on that. We've also identified the standard and guidance for geophysics as being one that's in need of a substantial rewrite, and the building standard and guidance. And in both those cases, we're working again with our special interest groups who provide the technical expertise and the sector knowledge to allow that work to go forward. There are further areas which are of lower priority or where there isn't a direct read across with HED or IAI documents. And these include our standards and guidance for desk-based assessment, for archaeological advice by historic environment services, and our standard and guidance that covers the consultancy role in the commissioning and procurement of archaeological work. In each case, we're identifying any overlaps, duplications, inconsistencies and gaps in order to strengthen the CIFA standard and supplement the universal guidance by signposting the HED documents. The project team are currently working on detailed drafts of new guidance, which will then be signposted from the CIFA standards. User feedback will be particularly important, and consultation and engagement with practitioners in Northern Ireland essential. The project aims to complete its work later in the spring. Maintaining relevant, accessible and user-friendly professional standards in a sector which is constantly evolving and innovating presents a number of challenges. But this project will provide a model for reviewing, updating and developing standards which are up to date with current practice, relevant wherever CIFA members work, user-friendly and accessible, presented clearly with links to supporting good practice guidance examples, resources and case studies, and easier to maintain and update in the future. Thank you very much.